Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Virtual Happy Hour. I'm Raina with Garden District Bookshop, and tonight I'm very excited to welcome three guests here tonight, and we're going to talk about all the cool and weird and obscure and wonderful things there are to do here in New Orleans. Between all of our guests, they have a few decades worth of tour guide and historian experience, and their book is Secret New Orleans, Guide to the Wonderful and Weird, Wonderful, and Obscure in New Orleans. And I'm just going to click the button and invite them all in so we can start asking them questions. Mark Aspiazu and Angela Aspiazu. We can click that.
Hello.
And James Corbyn right down here. There we go. Everybody's here. Hello, everyone.
Hey, James. Put your hand up, James.
Oh.
Other way. There you go.
I'm bad at virtual high fives.
That's good. I've never done that. Hold on. High five me, Mark. Can we do that?
Oops,
there you go, Mark. That's a proper virtual high five.
Yes, that is excellent. That's the first time we've done that. I'm going to work harder on that so we can
we are not the Brady Bunch
for virtual happy hour.
I'm going to hold all of you up. Yeah.
We should have worked on this backstage. Not
There definitely should have been a rehearsal.
So many other things, but not the virtual hair. So my first question to you guys is, what are you drinking? It's happy hour. Show me your drink.
All right. Wow. Okay, cool. So I have my favorite stout of all time. The first time I had it, my mind was blown out of the water. I couldn't believe it. And it's from a wonderful brewery right here in New Orleans called Urban South. It's called Café, which is a Vietnamese coffee stout. Vietnamese coffee stout, one of the most fantastic stouts I've ever had. It is absolutely wonderful. If you have never had it, you got to go get some. I know I saw it at Rouse's. I know that it's a limited supply, but I love Urban South. I love their café. And it's in an old glass from Lagers, which ain't there no more, right?
Yeah.
So there you go.
Lagers in there no more?
No, sadly.
And I think have a Lagers glass, but in mine, I'm taking it a little lower key. I have some lime seltzer, but I've added some El Guapo lavender bitters to that.
Ooh.
And maybe later I'll add the vodka, but I wanted to think clearly. So, yeah.
I've been doing this for 4.5 months. I went straight to the vodka.
I also have no interest in thinking clearly, so I've got my big tumbler right here. So it's funny. This is a modified version of what we often gave out as lagniappe for our cocktail tours, which is instead of vodka, which is what we used then, I've got bourbon in here. So it's bourbon. I'm also using El Guapo, but I've got chicory pecan bitters in here. And then topped it off with my go-to vice, which is Canada Dry Ginger Ale. I know it's vices go, it's not the most exciting, but that's mine.
Okay, wait. Tell me about this cocktail tour. You guys give a cocktail tour? First of all, hold on. Let me back up.
Okay.
Mark and Angela and James, everyone, they are co-owners of New Orleans Secrets Tours.
Yep.
And I'm going to link to that so you guys can have a look at what they do and all the tours that they offer, or will be offering again soon post-COVID. So you have to, we'll go there. Okay, now go back. You guys give a cocktail tour?
Yep. Cocktail tour is one of my favorites. I absolutely love it. So it's a cocktail and history tour. So we talk about the history of the French Quarter, and we talk about some classic cocktails, what a cocktail is, why is it called cocktail, some of the theories on why it's called cocktail. And we go to different places around the French Quarter talking about different cocktails, like, of course, the Sazerac, the French 75, the Pim's Cup, Ramos Gin Fizz. It's just a lot of fun. It's like, what is it? What did we say? History over happy hour. Yeah, history over happy hour. But it's a blast. I love it. I'm always learning something new, believe it or not. And I just can't wait to start giving it again. It's just killing me that we can't do it right now. A lot of the bars are closed. But, you know, it's a fantastic tour. We have such a blast doing it. And, you know, the tour is 3 hours long and it feels like it's 10 minutes. It goes so fast. but I could do the tour for another 2, 3, 4 more hours with so many different places. I love talking about my favorite places in the quarter and my favorite drinks and my favorite bartenders. So,
well, even as obscure, sort of as ridiculous as it is for any of us to say, oh, we drink hurricanes. Like that's my favorite part of it, is to introduce tourists to what an actual hurricane is supposed to taste like, instead of the Kool-Aid concoction that everybody knows on Bourbon Street.
Definitely.
I every time new friends come to town for the first time, and they always want to do Bourbon Street, they always want to get like a hand grenade or a hurricane. I'm like, go on, you take that night, go on.
I agree with that.
Here's a key. You just crawl on back to the house. And there's the couch whenever you're ready. Then the next night, here I'll go. We'll go together because I've done that. I don't need to do that again.
You're gonna get a headache on Bourbon Street, but there are some places and some drinks on Bourbon Street that I do recommend. It's not everything. It's not all the time. I don't recommend Bourbon Street 100% for some real quality New Orleans and French Quarter. But there are a couple of things on Bourbon Street that I love, and I highly recommend. And people are kind of shocked to see, oh, wow, you'd recommend something on Bourbon Street? And I'm like, yeah, there's a couple of places.
Come on, you got to get one.
For sure.
There's multiple ones. You got to take the tour for the whole. Yeah,
I would love to go over it. There's two in particular that I'm thinking about. So one, of course, is so this is the main one. The main one that I really, really enjoy on Bourbon Street is at a restaurant called Cornet, and they've got a drink called the Blueberry Hill. And it's absolutely fantastic.
It's
it's got a little vodka. It's got this fresh blueberry puree that they put in it and some soda, and it's just a wonderful, wonderful drink that you just can't find anywhere. So it's right there at Cornet on Bourbon. And then, let's see. If you go towards... Oh, no, I wouldn't recommend that one. I was thinking Royal. What's that?
Belle Epoque.
Oh, was that on? Yeah, of course. That's right. It's at the Absinthe House. So Belle Epoque is the new speakeasy in the Absinthe House there, the old Absinthe House. And they do an original absinthe cocktail, which is with the drip. But they do the one that Tita was talking about.
Death in the Afternoon.
Yeah.
Which is if you want to try absinthe, but you don't want to go all in because you're not a big black licorice flavor person, Death in the Afternoon is a nice way to ease yourself into it.
All right, that's for me. I'm not a black licorice fan.
Yeah, definitely try it because it's
the distillery is going to escape me. It's been 6 months of coronavirus time, right? But there was a place in New Orleans that was making a red hibiscus absinthe.
So they have that.
Remember the name
at Potions.
Yeah, they have it at Potions above Fritzl. That's where I remember having it. Right.
Yeah, that's weird. That's delicious, though. I love it.
Mm-hmm. Somebody in the comments mentioned Cat's Meow, and I mean, obviously, you got to do cats, right?
Yeah, they have the big juice. That's Beth. Hey, Beth.
Beth,
the Cat's Meow.
I got a couple secrets about Cat's Meow. So one is if you're not from around here and you want to get up on a balcony on Bourbon Street, go in the front doors, take a right, go up on the balcony and straight outside, and you have a Bourbon Street at, I guess not your fingertips, it's more your toe tips at that point because you're looking down. But
you have a safe distance from the actual street itself. I think that's what's important.
Yes, you get the bird's eye view at Cat's Meow. The other thing is on the sign it says world's best karaoke bar. So I had to research this, being the New Orleans history nerd that we are. And I found out that when karaoke was first brought over from Japan, it was by a specific company in the 1970s, and they opened up different karaoke bars throughout the world and in the US. Well, at that time, they did name Cat's Meow as the very best karaoke bar in the world. So
so it really is the best karaoke bar in the world.
They could say, right?
Or it was. Who knows?
And I was going to keep this a secret, and then I realized one of us mentioned it in the book. So if we're talking about hurricanes and good ones,
yes, I did that.
The Nash Roberts at the Black Bar of Palace Cafe. That's a really good one. That's a properly made hurricane.
Well, we were just there the other day with Paul
Yeah.
James.
Oh, right. Sure.
And let me tell you, Palace Cafe Black Duck Bar makes an amazing hurricane called the Nash Roberts, like you mentioned. And only people from New Orleans knows who Nash Roberts is. But
crap to anybody that knows who Nash Roberts was, right?
But I'm not gonna lie, I've had daiquiris all at different bars around New Orleans. Without question, the best daiquiri, in my personal opinion, of course, is at the Black Duck Bar right there at Palace Cafe. It is unbelievable. Those tenders know what they're doing. It's really great.
Palace Cafe is kind of a
go
sleeper thing for me. So I've been here for 15 years. I've been in New Orleans, and Palace Cafe was one of those places I just sort of passed by. You see it, you pass by, I've heard of it, but it's on Canal there, so it's a little hard to get to, and it's not that like the most convenient thing, and it looks real fancy on the outside, but then it's like got this play between, is it too fancy for me to be able to just go there, or is it like just sidewalk seating? What is happening? So it took me years to go there, and once I did, I fell in love with it. I mean, like, I got it. It was one of those ones where you hear people talk about all the time, and then you finally go, and you're like, oh, I see.
Did you go upstairs?
I see.
And then the upstairs, right, is even better.
I've been on the patio. I've been, like, I've eaten, I've drank, because once you go, and then
exactly.
You're going to have to get there again.
It's a great
all
restaurant.
three of us live on the other side of the river in Algiers Point, on the best bank, as we like to call it. But it means every time I go to any show or production at the Sanger, like Palace is my go-to because it's on the way. I just get off at the base of Canal Street, walk 4 blocks up to Palace, eat dinner, walk 4 more up to the theater, and we're there.
Absolutely. It's
but
my
it
go-to.
is
I find myself in that area for a reason. It's now my go-to.
Right.
Yeah. There's so many things like that.
But I always say, I like asking people what their spirits are. And so if you're a whiskey drinker, I'm going to send you to Barrel Proof. If you're a rum drinker, you're going to Black Duck because that's the biggest rum selection that exists in the city.
Yeah. So
unless there's another one I don't know about, in which case send me that address.
Everybody who's watching right now, if you have any questions or comments, put them in the comments. We can see all that. We will answer your questions. We will, if you want us to elaborate on something that we're talking about, by all means, mention it because we will go on. If you are looking for anything to do in or around New Orleans, looking to visit, or if you're local and just looking for, staycation, because we're kind of stuck right now. If you're not stuck in place in your house, we're trying not to travel too much right now, or at least do that safely. And we can definitely give you recommendations either way.
Yeah. We also do food tours. We do history, food, cocktails, you name it, we do it. And 2 people that are watching right now, I see Max and Beth. Those are our guinea pigs for our foodie tours. So they've been on all of our tours.
Which is really a rough job, I gotta say.
Yeah. I was about to say, how do you sign up to beta test a food tour?
We ask you.
Is there some sort of vetting process we can go through?
It sounds great, and then the experience of it. Yeah, by the end of it, you really are just rolling home. It's like a Thanksgiving dinner. We've got one that runs sort of way down on Magazine by Audubon Park. So Monkey Hill Bar and Picnic Provisions and those sorts of places. And when we first tested that one, I don't know how we got to the end of it.
Yeah.
And it even included a restaurant that then we eliminated because of time constraints and things like that. So we ate even more food than was on the tour. It was brutal, but it's the kind of brutality I like. So
yep, we're foodies.
When you build these tours, I mean, you kind of have to build it out on paper, right? And then that's what you're doing. You're going out and testing it. So you find sometimes that you have too many places, too few places, things like that.
Yeah, definitely. And first it comes up about as an idea. It's like, that neighborhood sounds great. No one's doing it. So let's go check out that neighborhood, whatever it is. And then we go and we realize, this is perfect for, this kind of a tour. And then we walk it and then we write it up and then we rehearse it. And then we go back and do it again. And then we ask Max and Beth to come out and do it. And then, then it becomes part of our repertoire and it gets on the menu.
Right.
I love. We've got a local.
Question: Who got eliminated from the food tour?
The hard questions coming right out of the gate. I can answer this diplomatically because I know Beth's a local.
Yeah,
Right?
I guess the one on in the Audubon tour, Beth, she took the tour, so it was already eliminated. So before she took that tour, we were going to an Italian restaurant. Avo was one of them.
There you go.
Excellent.
I wasn't even gonna name her. I was just gonna say we go to these 3, and then you could guess based on the location which one.
Right. Yeah, it's right in the middle. Yeah. Great restaurant too.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's so many to choose from. I mean, that's our magazine food tour has been our flagship, and it's stayed roughly the same. I mean, my favorites I think are still there 6 years later. But of course, dessert. We used to go to Sucre, and now Sucre's not, ain't there no more. So we had to go someplace else. So they do change as time goes on. But in this town, you can't go half a block without running into a good restaurant. So there's always somebody there to kind of step in and take the place up.
People come into the bookstore a lot and they say, oh, well, where do you recommend we eat? Where do you recommend, we get a drink? And it's just like, trying to pick, where do you go and get a bad meal?
Yeah.
Well said.
Yes.
I love that your bookstore is half a block from Commander's Palace, and people are going, where do I go to eat? That giant teal building you just walked by, right? Just go back there.
Exactly. Basically,
make sure you got the color on, but other than that, you're good to go.
Yep. That Commanders gets a recommendation. It always gets a recommendation. Commanders is one of the only restaurants that I've been in that is worth every single penny. But I look at them like, okay, look, you can't get in there today. Come back. Are you still in town for a week? Okay, go back there, definitely. But you can't go there today, so I'm not going to recommend that. I'm going to recommend, fill in the blank. Yeah. But it feels harder judging things more on like how they're dressed today, if they have kids or not with them, how far are they willing to walk? That's really what I base it on, not on, are you going to get a bad meal if you go to the place that's close to you? Yeah. You are not.
And that's always heartbreaking as a tour guide giving like a garden district tour, is you've taken these people around for 2 hours, showing them Lafayette Cemetery and all these beautiful homes. And then they get to the end and they say, where do we eat? And you go, well, I'd love to send you Manders right here, but you're wearing shorts and you're wearing sandals and you've got a tank top. So yeah, they're not going to take you. Go down to Magazine Street.
Right.
Yeah. Nobody wants to take a 2-hour tour in August in the clothes that you would need to get into Commanders.
Absolutely not. We should start at the bookstore like a coat exchange, like a coat.
You can borrow a jacket. Like.
Go up in it, like just hang it in the closet, go do your tour, come back.
One size fits all, white button down. Yeah, you're good. That's it.
See, this is how all good ideas start, with some drinking.
Exactly.
And
so
that's how it begins.
After the idea, I feel like we take that and you kind of flesh it out and you start thinking about your route, because sometimes you're limited by geography. And then once you know your route, I don't know, I'm speaking for myself, but I tend to walk it once or twice. And I'm sure I look like a crazy person because I'm literally just narrating to myself. And it's not unlike sort of stand-up comedy. At every stop, you've got about 5 minutes and you know which points you want to hit. And then you just sort of riff in between those and you'll answer questions as you get to the next spot. And as I'm sure all viewers will find out by the end of this hour, I talk way too much as it is. So I'm always trying to trim. Other people have to expand out. So by the end of it, you've got something that I hope is entertaining.
And I think that's the hardest part about creating tours is, what am I not going to share? Because listening to you guys talk about Commander's Palace, I'm thinking in my head, you want some secrets about Commander's Palace? I can tell you about Emerald. I can tell you about blackening. I can tell you about going through the kitchen. I can tell you about the speakeasy. It's like how, judging. And we keep a lot of those things to ourselves. And then once we know our groups, we keep our groups super small so we can cater to what they're responding to. And if they're not responding to food at all on a cocktail tour, fine, we'll keep it all about cocktails and history. We won't talk anymore about food. So yeah, biting my tongue or deciding what not to share is really the most difficult part.
Agreed.
Yeah. You always leave something on the table, I think, when you're done with a tour. There's always something that went unsaid just because of time or circumstance or whatever it is.
And I think I can speak for all three of us when I say that's one reason writing the book was such a wonderful experience for us, because all these little tidbits of information that we can't say during a tour, this was an outlet for some of that.
Yeah, and like you said, you're feeling out the current group you have with you, you know, and that having to file through all of those bits of information you have in your head and go, okay, which one of them is this group of people going to respond to? I imagine is kind of one of the fun things being on the fly, but also one of the challenges of being a tour guide as well.
Yep, definitely.
Yeah.
So while we're in the Garden District, we're talking about the Garden District and we're talking about the book. I want to talk about the rink. So for those of you who have been to the Garden District Bookshop, we are located in an old building in the Garden District of New Orleans. The building is called the Rink, and it currently has I think we have 7 retail shops now and some offices and everything like that. But it wasn't always that way, and I'm going to give that to you guys to tell us the history of the Rink.
Sure. So the Rink, oh gosh, that's such a fun one. Yeah, a lot of people say, hey, this was built as an ice skating rink. Well, again, did the research. It turns out, well, let me back up. So the reason the rink was started was because of this huge party we were going to have celebrating the 100th year that cotton was sent from New Orleans to Britain. Yay! It turned into such a popular event, other countries wanted to get on the invite list too. So lo and behold, in 1884, this party becomes the first World's Fair. And a really smart lady named Clara Hagen said, you know, a lot of people are coming into town. I should build an attraction and capitalize on this event. So she built a state-of-the-art facility celebrating the coolest thing to do in your free time in 1884, roller skating. You gotta imagine, this is when the toe stop had just been invented and the wheels were just repatented and you could glide on your skates. So this is like a really big deal back then. And yeah, it was for roller skating. Now it turns out in 1884, to have an ice skating rink in New Orleans would have been a really interesting feat of science, right? Ice. It would have to come down from the north. Anyway, turns out the technology was available. You could run copper pipes under the floor, put glycerin through it, and freeze it. But yeah, the rink was never an ice skating rink. It was a roller skating rink.
As anybody who's lived here in August could have told you. I mean, just from common sense alone, right? I think the most interesting thing to me is right after it stops being a rolling rink, they convert it. And the first thing they converted it to, it was going to be like the garage for all of the horse-drawn carriages. So they built a stable that supposedly was going to house 300 horses. And I've been in the rink. I can't figure out how you fit 300 horses in that building. I'm thinking, was it 2 stories? Was it an extra lot that I don't know about? So, as is always the case, I think the story kind of spawns more questions and you can dig deeper and figure everything out.
They definitely did not have the same maybe animal cruelty laws that we do now.
Yeah, you're right.
Don't get me started.
Well, I think
you're not too far from that Bradish Johnson house.
It's fascinating, the history of that building, and that it's been so many different things. Like you said, James, it's like people come in and they ask us, at the bookstore, and we're like, there's no black and white answer to that. Like, what was it? I mean, it was so many different things over time.
Well, across the street from y'all, you've got a real estate office that at one time was the apothecary, was the pharmacist back when, you know, you sold potions and leeches and all sorts of other things, right? Not kind of the pharmacy we think of, but yeah, everything evolves into something else.
Absolutely, and I love it, and it's being remodeled again right now, and I mean it's still going to be retail space, but there's going to be more of it. And
oh wow, all right.
One of my thoughts, you know, when that first started happening was like, oh no, they're gonna, you know, hurt this old building, and then I think, okay, wait, because like exactly what we're talking about, it has evolved so many different times over time that this is what it is. It is going to continue to live on as, you know, with these businesses in it, because we are modifying and changing and upgrading to different things, and we're keeping that general structure the same, obviously, but like we're moving forward, and that's progress. So,
Yep, definitely.
Absolutely. So, again, I'm going to just say for some new people who have come in, if you have any questions or comments or anything like that about anything that we're talking about, or you need a recommendation for your next visit, or you've got a couple of days off and you want to know something interesting and fun and different to do, just tell us what you like in the comments or ask us a question in the comments, and we will answer those questions.
You can ask the most personal questions about Mark that you want.
He might blush, but
We did get a question via the watch party on the New Orleans Secrets page from Leslie, and she's thinking, because this lady loves New Orleans, loves it as much as we do. So she wants to come back. She's wondering if there's enough restaurants, activities open to plan a fall visit to New Orleans.
Define fall. No.
Definitely, maybe.
Or 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, you know, we don't know. There are some things that are open. There are a lot of things that are closed. For example, Commander's Palace, they invented brunch, but you can't get it right now, at least not inside. They're doing to go. Do we see that changing before like October? I don't know. It's already September in a couple days.
Mm-hmm.
So I really don't know.
Yeah. And the real heartbreaker are some places that won't reopen, like K-Paul's.
Oh, that's the worst.
That was a
Yeah.
killer.
I mean, to give you an idea, we have like 8 to 10 tours that we regularly offer at New Orleans Secrets Tours. Right now, we're able to offer 3 of them because different restaurants are closed and museums.
Can't do a cocktail tour when there's no bars, right?
Yeah. Right. So it's really hard to say.
Yeah.
I mean, I think if you're planning a trip, your best bet is probably to make your lists, you know, make places that you've heard about and everything, and then give them a call the week before. Just call them up and say, hey, are you guys open? What are you open for? Because even if you're open to go, you can take it back to your hotel. I mean, a lot of places are absolutely worth it. Make sure it doesn't require any cooking. Some of them, I know. So there's 2 different types of to-go right now. One is just like, here, it's ready to go, just go eat it. And the other one, I know a couple places are doing like, they give you the instructions. It's almost like one of those meal box kits. Mm-hmm. Who is a Coquette? Coquette was doing that. I don't know if they still are, but they were doing it for a while. And you would take it home, and it had very detailed instructions and everything you needed for your like 3-course meal, but you had to do some of it. But yeah, call them, ask them, what are you offering right now? And then make those little notes next to your, you know, you had your list of your dream restaurants, and make the little notes. Maybe you have to modify a couple or mark a couple off, but there's definitely enough open to experience New Orleans, I think.
Yeah. You know, with COVID rules in place, we're still able to do the Magazine Street Foodie Tour. All those restaurants are open. Of course, there's the social distancing. There's only so much capacity. But right now, tourism is at such a low that even with reduced capacity, they're not filling up. So we're still able to do that tour.
And that's just it. I think the places that are open are so happy to see anybody. That you know, I went back, I had a friend visit last week. And kind of had that same problem. What's open? You know, what do we normally do? We can't hang out like we used to. But we still went to Doris Metropolitan for burgers on Friday lunch, and you know, so there were still some things that we could do that are the old standbys. But I'll be honest, I've stayed largely on the West Bank and really largely in my house since March. I've tried to go out as little as possible unless it's absolutely necessary, or unless it's something like that where it's a friend I see once a year. And I think in New Orleans we have such this nostalgia kind of about the things that are gone. That whole ain't there no more culture, and that's largely, because of not just coronavirus, but Katrina 15 years ago and all these other things through the years. And so I find myself going back to a lot of my books because you don't ever know. If I had known that was going to be my last meal at K. Paul's, I'd have eaten twice as much as I would have. Right? And so it reminds me, what did I think was important enough that I wrote it down in a book? I should probably go visit those guys, kind of one more time before this all changes everything.
And it did.
I completely agree. This whole thing has put into perspective the local places, restaurants, and all different kinds of local establishments where you took them for granted. I think, it's like, oh, you like the place, you've been there that one time, but you don't really take the extra time to go back or whatever. It's a little out of the way or something. You make excuses. And all of a sudden it's closed, whether that's permanent or not. And I've definitely been taking extra time to spend money in those local places now, even now. And it's weird. Now I'm going more out of my way. I will call them. Are you open? Okay. I'd like to pre-order it. Would tell me when it's ready. I'll come pick it up. It's okay. Things like that, where I would have felt, oh, that's too much work. Just like 6 or 7 months ago, I go, oh, that's too much. That's too hard. And now all of a sudden, that becomes way easy compared to you'll never be able to get their gumbo again.
Right, exactly. Well, while we're talking about this, I want to shout out specifically Toop's Meadery. Isaac Toop's, one of our chefs. I was a fan already, and then even if I hadn't been, I'd be a devotee after coronavirus, because especially in that first 2 months when everybody was out of work. 90% of the city, it seemed like, was just shut down. And they went out there and they've been giving meals for free to service industry people, to hospitality folks. They just said, look, we're not going to be able to cook meals for a living, so we'll cook meals for everybody that's out of work and just hand them out for free. And so they really, to watch like that step up and help the community. And of course, we saw it with folks after Katrina too, but I can't speak highly enough of them. So that's going to be one of my new recommendations as they go out over and over and over again is, go patronize them. They deserve the business at this point.
Absolutely. All right, so we have a few questions coming in here. So Beth asked, are you guys working on any new tours? Like now that you've got this presumably extra time up in your hands?
She's only asking that because she wants to take more tours. See, we know this individual.
She's our guinea pig. So.
Yeah, so I'm just messing. We're like I said earlier. I don't know. I forgot if we were on it or before.
Weren't.
Okay, we're working on. There's a company that does apps, and we're doing this. We're working on a couple of tours where it would be an app on your phone, so it's almost like a virtual do-it-yourself type thing. So that will be interesting to see if that works and how it works out.
Yeah, but other than that, I think some secrets still have to be kept at this point, Beth.
Keep your eye on the website and on your social media, and that's how you'll know.
Yeah.
I'll throw Beth a bone here. I've been drinking too much bourbon, so I'm going to spill some secrets. No, for years in my head, I really want to do a music tour of New Orleans, which sounds like it would be very easy, but again, when you try to plot it out on a map, you realize that our music locations are sort of all over the board. And so what I'd love to do is sort of a Treme specific music tour, where we actually would start at one of the places that we talk about in our books, which is a laundromat now. And so that's I lived in the
oh my gosh.
Is that one of yours?
That was one of the ones I wanted to talk about.
Amazing
work.
Yeah, so it is. It used to be the old J&M recording studio, and that was Cosimo Matassa's studio. And I did not realize until I started researching for the book, there are so many stories in this town that start with this famous person dropped out of Tulane University, and then they did this thing, right? So you've got like the crew of Tux and everybody else. So Matassa drops out of Tulane. He starts this recording studio. And he winds up recording pretty well everybody but Elvis Presley in that time period. So Jerry Lee Lewis, Little Richard, Fats Domino, but also Dr. John, Irma Thomas, Alan Toussaint. Anybody in New Orleans you ever heard of recorded with Matassa at some point. And then, like we were just saying with the ice skating rink, now it's a laundromat. And now even I think it's actually a laundromat and an art gallery because it's changed owners within the last year. But it sits right on Rampart Street at the top of the quarter. And from there, you'd be able to cross the street into Armstrong Park. And then you get to talk about Louis Armstrong and Mahalia Jackson and the Treme Brass Band. And so I think there's enough there to maybe fill 2 hours and get the tourists back to the safety of the French Quarter before it's over so that they feel secure and know where they are.
You should time it to end somewhere that has live music about to start.
Yeah, well, and then there's the question, right, of timing, right? Because, are the daytime places going to be open long enough that you can visit them before you get to a place that's got live music, or vice versa? Can you find a live music venue that starts early enough you can get them there? And the answer is always yeah.
I'm the idea woman, and you plot the course.
Yeah, there you go. Right, that works for me. I want to say one thing. I have a secret. So I realized today, because this is what I was watching before we jumped on. So this is the, oh boy, if I could do math, 57th anniversary of the March on Washington and Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech. And that speech would not have included the words I have a dream if not for New Orleans native Mahalia Jackson, who literally is sitting behind Reverend King as he's giving his speech. And she at one point yells at him, "Martin, tell him about the dream." And if you go back and watch the video, they've been playing it all day long today. You can see the moment where he pushes his notes aside and starts just speaking off the cuff, just sort of making it up as he goes along. And that's the part we all learned in school. It's the I have a dream part of it. And that was because of Mahalia Jackson. So credit to her where it's due. Yeah.
See, I had no idea. I learned something. I've learned so many things already.
I've been listening to her gospel music all week long.
James, that's the story that always gets me deep in the feels. I'm already starting over here. I'm like, oh my God, he's gonna tell the story, but you didn't do it the way you do it in the cemetery. So we're good.
Well, it's funny. I've been following a lot of the marches on Washington that are happening today. And so I just sort of started bringing up these old videos back from 1963. And I found one where Reverend King is supposed to speak to a group of people. And he introduces Mahalia Jackson. And I think somebody just eggs her on. And she breaks into Joshua Fought the Battle of Jericho in the middle of this crowded rally. And poor Dr. King has to sit there for 3 minutes waiting for everybody to stop singing so that he can give the sermon he's been paid to give. And it's amazing. It was so cool to see these two figures just sort of poking fun at each other and having a good time in real time. And that's the kind of stuff that you look for as a historian. Those are those moments that you want to be able to communicate to other people.
Those are the real moments with these people that we think of as being larger than life and somehow unreal, somehow removed from the rest of us at this point in history. But then you get to see them just having a good time.
Well, King's speech was supposed to be all about how the United States had written a check for insufficient funds. And that was the name of it. It was his insufficient funds speech, which sounds just as interesting as his I have a dream, right? Can you imagine if he'd given the other one? Nobody, we'd be like, oh, right, there was speeches in Washington and that was all right. And we moved on, right? So just these little accidents that cause history are fascinating. So I told you I talk too much. I'm a nerd about this stuff.
Yeah, well, you have a question, actually. Nicole has a question for you. So you mentioned living on the West Bank. Do you have any good Algiers Point or Best Bank stories or recommendations?
Well, I mean, we all live on the West Bank. So,
That's right.
Mark and Angie, you want to jump in, or I'm going to go to my favorite?
Well, a great place when it comes to West Bank eating. Of course, I'm always about food. And in my opinion, one of the top 5 best restaurants for breakfast is 130 steps from my front door. It's called Toot de Sweet. And oh my God, they do a dish here called the achafalaya. And it's corn grits covered by crawfish etouffee. And it's just ridiculous. So, it's one of my favorite things in Algiers Point.
I was going to vote for Crown and Anchor, which is not too far.
Crown and Anchor, yep.
Right.
I love them too. Yep.
Crown and Anchor is in the book, by the way. So the book,
I love the book, as a matter of fact, right?
One of them is about, well, Crown and Anchor is, first of all, an amazing place. You meet New Orleanians in their own neighborhood. Granted, you took a 5-minute ferry boat ride across the river. So close to the French Quarter, yet it's so far away in many respects. It feels like a little village over here. And I think Crown and Anchor is definitely a place where you can experience that. If you've seen the movie The Big Short, yes, with Brad Pitt, supposedly he's in London and he's working at a bar and he takes a phone call. Well, London happens to be the Crown and Anchor pub. They didn't change a thing. They just went in there, set up, and filmed it. But another reason it's in the book is because it's the only place you can really step through a time machine and enter a whole nother world. The front door is a Doctor Who TARDIS.
I have a visual aid, strangely enough, because I believe my curtain there.
Oh, yeah, look at that.
Right. So yeah, if you find a door that looks like my living room curtains, that would be Crown and Anchor.
Yeah, and there's a great outdoor space too. Any place you go in Algiers Point, you might think, oh, we'll just duck in there for a quick pint or for a quick meal.
Oh no.
You might find yourself in there for a few hours because New Orleanians are friendly people. They talk to you, and you suddenly have all these friends that feel like old friends even though you just met. So it's a neat place.
I saw somebody else ask in here how we saw New Orleans changing after COVID. And I just talking about this, one of the things I'm over here thinking is, God, I miss the ferry. I have not ridden the ferry across the Mississippi River since March. I've gone to the East Bank. I've just crossed the Crescent City connection. I've just not been able to take the boat. And that used to be, a round trip every day on our way to the French Quarter for work. So I'm looking forward to getting back on the boat again.
Is the ferry not running, or is it just?
I mean, I'm sure it is. I just haven't gotten on it since coronavirus has gone. Right. But as a kid, I grew up in rural Mississippi and just sort of was raised on Mark Twain and Tom Sawyer and all that. So every time I'm on that boat, I feel like I'm high-fiving 10-year-old me from 30 years away because that's now what I do for a living is cross the river to go to work.
And what I think a lot of people don't realize, and James can speak to it, is that the West Bank, especially here, Algiers, is steeped in voodoo history as well.
A ton. I mean, it is the sort of tragic part of the history is that it's the area where all the enslaved people were kept before they were taken to market. So they would be kept on this side to be sold. And so it was a kind of a grim place for a long time. And then because of that, because everybody was kind of being kept on this side of the river, you would have these voodoo priestesses and priests that would go and meet with these people kind of in the way that you would expect, in the way that we send, clergy now into prisons. It's the same sort of idea. And the city got so nervous that these voodoo priestesses were going to stir up rebellion like they'd seen in other places in the Caribbean, that they eventually restrict congregation. They say, look, if you're African, you can't meet anywhere on the West Bank. And the only place we're going to let you meet on the East Bank is what we now call Congo Square. And so that's how Congo Square comes about, is that they're worried about these rebellions. And of course, Congo Square brings us not just voodoo, but also jazz music and everything else. It's such a huge part of our history. But it was really a reaction to everything that was going on here on this side of the river. So yeah, I mean, every block I feel like has these sorts of stories. You know, you can't get more than about 20 feet without coming across some sort of strange legend.
That's absolutely one of the things I love most about New Orleans. I'm from Florida, Southwest Florida, and comparatively, I mean, in Southwest Florida, they basically like just cut it all down, pave it over, and then plant a couple palm trees with a strip mall. It happens. I mean, that sounds like an exaggeration, but it's absolutely not. And coming from that like sort of mentality, I got here and then I was like, everything here is older than the oldest possible thing.
That's just what I'm nodding my head about.
It just is. And every time you turn around, there's a piece of history that has been, yes, there have been plenty of things that have been paved over or torn down. It happens everywhere. But there's a plaque, there's a story, there's a building that is in fact the exact same building that whatever this thing happened in. And when I got here and really realized that it's like a living history museum just being here.
Right.
I think that's really when I fell in love with the city.
And we are. I mean, maybe Charleston would be the other one, but there's no city I've encountered that is as fiercely protective of its history as New Orleans. You know, like every building in the French Quarter could stand to have a renovation, but we're never going to do it because that would require changing the building. Yeah. And so that's something I don't see in a lot of other American cities.
Absolutely not. I don't. Now, okay, so here's another question for you guys, because I'm a big traveler, and I said that to you guys or on the air, I'm not sure, but I am a big traveler. I love to travel. It has been very hard the last few months not being able to not only go anywhere, but also like you can't really plan it. Just like we were talking about planning a fall trip to New Orleans, like you can map it out, but you're going to need to call ahead. And you don't know. You got to be very flexible. You don't know if those things that you want to do are going to be available at that time. So are you guys big travelers or big historians? Where are you drawing what your tour company from? What motivated you to do?
That's a great question. Yeah, we love to travel. We're always looking for a reason to get into a plane and go somewhere. I can tell you one of my biggest inspirations when it comes to wanting to be a tour guide and start a tour company was in Oregon. We went to Portland and we took a tour. The name of the company was Brewvana, Brewvana, Brewvana. And it was a beer tour on this bus. And this tour guide was so impressive. I mean, she not only did she know everything, but she was so enthusiastic about every beer. You just can't help but have a good time. And then you're having beers, and so you're having a good time, and you're meeting all these people on this small bus. And we had such a good time that Angela and I just turned to each other with like, we got to try this because New Orleans is perfect for this. Not necessarily beer, which they're doing, which is a great idea right now, actually. But, a foodie tour or a history tour in general. And that was a huge inspiration for me. So, yeah, we love to travel. We take food and history tours all the time whenever we travel. And
such an important part of traveling is also learning more about where you come from and why your own culture is unique and special. That's a huge lesson to learn, too, from travel.
It's funny, New Orleanians, whenever I have someone on my tour from New York, I say, gosh, we're very similar because New Yorkers are a lot like New Orleanians because everywhere we go, we compare it to what we do in New Orleans. So if you go to Florida and someone's making a soup, you're like, that's good, but we do it better. New Yorkers are the same exact way. But yeah. So
I love when I go visit people in other cities and they're like, oh, we have this Cajun restaurant. Let me take you to it. I'm like, okay. Like, I know you're just trying. You went way out of your way to find that place. And you thought about it for weeks because you knew it was coming. And we'll go. But you just have to temper everything you say. You're like, yeah.
I was at a place in Chattanooga, Tennessee that advertised Cajun food. And I walked in and the first thing I saw is that the wrought iron around the courtyard had fleur-de-lis in it. I thought, all right, nice touch. And then I got in and I saw Abita beer flags hanging all around. And I thought, okay, somebody knows the local beer. And then I ordered a po' boy and it came out on Leidenheimer bread. Oh. And I asked the waitress, I said, is the cook in the kitchen? And she said, yes, sir. And I said, well, he's from New Orleans. I'd like to talk to him. And sure enough, he comes out. He goes, man, how'd you know I was from New Orleans? And I said, look around the place. How did I not know you were from here? Right? And it turns out he was a Katrina transplant. He'd moved up to Chat after Katrina and had just never come back. But he built his own little tiny section of New Orleans in that city. And it was perfect. Wow. You would have found it on Magazine Street right next to everything else and not noticed it was any different.
Usually that's not how the story goes.
Yeah.
No, it says Cajun or Creole and you're in like Dallas and it's just awful. Yeah. You know, it's just
Dallas. If you have anything Cajun on the menu, they have Tabasco sauce. Yeah, does that count? Right.
Gumbo with quinoa and tomatoes, right? Yeah.
Oh my God.
Oh, the Disney gumbo recipe with kale in it.
Oh. Yeah, so for those of you who don't know, what was it, like a year ago or so? It wasn't that long ago. Disney came out with a gumbo recipe.
Yeah, they published it. It was one of the chefs from one of the restaurants somewhere in Disney, and it was
the backlash was so severe they pulled it. They pulled the article.
Exactly right. That's right.
Yeah,
they pulled it. Yeah.
Yep.
What was that gumbo?
That's when you know you've made a lot of noise, when somebody eliminates the online presence.
Yeah.
They start trying to like erase everything they've done. Like, no, if we just delete it, it'll go away forever. It's not how.
Well, and that was the thing with kale, right? We had some, and I'm glad that I don't remember who it is because I would absolutely name and shame them. But some actress who had come down to film and said, "Well, I like New Orleans cuisine, except they don't know what kale is." And we were like, "Number one, was that your criteria, right? Kale knowledge was how you judged all the restaurants." And then everyone was like, we know what kale is. We use kale in this. And so it was Kalegate for a year or so.
Yeah, Kalegate. They actually called it that. Hilarious.
Mm-hmm.
So speaking about travel, and I think, Mark, if I remember correctly, this is your one of your contributions to the book, but if any of you have ever flown in or out of the New Orleans airport, you may have noticed on your ticket, it says MSY, which doesn't sound like NOLA or New Orleans or even Kenner, which is actually where the airport is located. Tell us why.
Yeah, when I was a kid, my aunt, she was a travel agent. She had her own little travel agency, and I always see MSY. And I asked her, I said, "Why does it say MSY?" She says, "Because back then, because the airport is named Moisant Airport." And I'm like, well, that still doesn't explain why it's MSY,
right?
And then years later, it turns into the Louis Armstrong Airport, and it's like, gosh, why is it MSY? Well, initially the airport was the Moisant Airport. There's the M. And what a lot of people don't realize is that it was named after John Moisant, who was a very famous aviator, first guy to ever take paying passengers from one side of the English Channel to the other. So, England to France. He was he wasn't like a racer, but he would do like times when it comes to flying, quickest time, etc., getting records for times when it comes to flying. And he was in New Orleans. And this was around 1910, early 1900s. And he was supposed to do a new record. And he was supposed to fly to Texas. But the first leg of the journey was from New Orleans just out to Kenner, where he was going to refuel and then take off again and fly out, to do the race or to do the time. And turns out when he was leaving Kenner, his plane crashed. It flipped over. He fell out and he died right there in Kenner at the Kenner Stockyards. And so the name of the airport is the Moisant Stockyards, hence the MSY. There you go. Mm-hmm. And it is so strange that few people, it's such a strange call sign, MSY. But one of the things I noticed that not just New Orleanians, but everyone, you don't ask why enough, especially in New Orleans. We take it for granted. We eat a po' boy. Well, why is it called a po' boy? We drink a cocktail. Why is it called a cocktail? All of these things are the things that we geek out about, James and Angela and myself. and why the book was written is because of the little things like that. You know, we took some time to just ask why.
Yeah,
It's not as a tourist. Oh, go ahead, Raina.
Oh no, I was just saying the stories like that are fascinating because it's so true. There's these things you live with, and that's just the way it is. When you take a minute to research it or ask somebody, and it uncovers this,
that's what I was about to say. I love the smart, dumb answers. Right. So that's what I was about to say. I had a tourist ask me if it was named MSY because it was actually just outside the border in Mississippi. And I was like, okay, MS, I get where you were going with that, but no, that's not it. So, right. Better to just ask a local. We'll tell you.
That's also funny because everybody's different perspective. Like I would never say that's just outside of Mississippi. But maybe if you're from Minnesota, like maybe if you're from somewhere completely different, you're looking, you're not have a lot of experience with this area. You go, oh, well, it's near Mississippi, right?
I mean, especially European travelers or travelers from abroad. I think one of the biggest things they don't really understand until they get here is really just how geographically large the United States is. Mm-hmm. And so then they get here and they, like you'll get people that say, I have a friend in Boston, and I'm like, no, Boston is 2,000 miles that way. No, I don't know anybody from Boston, but they're so used to being able to just kind of jump across the border to the neighboring country. And so for us, it's a little different. So if people flip Alabama and Mississippi, all right, I'll forgive you this once, since you're not from here, as long as it's not football season, then it's fighting words. But,
I hear the same thing about Americans that don't understand how big Australia is.
Right.
Because people from Australia, Melbourne and Sydney are not near. And, it's just a huge, huge mass of land. You don't realize it's the size of the United States. So just because you are from Australia doesn't mean you know the other Australian around the corner. I mean, it's really big. But.
Yeah, that's funny. When I was a teenager, I went to Australia. And a lot of people were asking me, "Oh, we're going to go to both coasts." It's like, no, that's not even that's not a thing. You can't just get on in a car and just go to the other coast real quick.
Right, that's a 2-day event. Yeah.
Right, yeah. And I mean, and it's different too than the U.S. and it's much more rural and outback, and it's a much bigger production to get to the other side of the country. And no, I was there for 3 weeks, and we only did maybe 2/3 of the East Coast, which was amazing, and I loved it. But we didn't even hit all of the East Coast, and we were going pretty much every day. So
amazing. Yeah,
you were asking us about travel. One of my favorite places. I spent 3 weeks in India, and it was the same thing. I flew into Bombay and then went up and kind of did the northwest into the north central, and then there's a whole other half of that country that I wasn't able to go, and I spent 3 weeks trying to fly all over the place, and so that's the nice part is that you can see I've got a map behind me of the world of places I've gone. So I don't know if you can see it I can see it on mine. I can see India is green, which means I've been there, right? And then all the places you see in gold are places I haven't gone yet. And I don't have any illusion that I'm ever going to fill that whole board up. But the goal is just get as many as possible, right, before you have to cash it in. So,
absolutely, I feel that.
Yeah, we're traveling.
Well, you guys, we have made it to 6 o'clock.
Oh, I still have bourbon left.
I know. It's when you start these things, you're like, oh, what are we going to fill all of our time with? And then it becomes 6 o'clock, and you're like, I'm not done. I saw you, James. You've been refilling.
I might have refilled once. I don't know. Right. There may have been a quick recharge somewhere in this stream.
Well, I just wanted to thank you all three for joining me this evening. It has been great talking to you. I love the book. Everyone, the book is at Garden District Bookshop. I put a link already in the comments, but you can give us a call. You can order it from our website, or you can drop in and pick up a copy. We are allowing people in the store with masks. Mark, Angela, James, thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us, Rita.
Thank you.
Cheers, Raina.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for
Bye.
joining.